common themes there: identity fraud, email compromise, and credentials. I mean, if there's anything that we've learned in 2024, it still goes back down to credentials, identity. Turn on your two-factor.
Yeah.
Well, we're back. 2024 wrap-up. We're going to talk about the things that have happened in 2024, landscape, what's happened in Apple, significant technology events, failed launches, a surge in wearables, emerging challenges for SMBs, and 2025 predictions. I'm sure Will's got some saucy ones lined up. First, let's just cover the IT landscape. So what are the trends? What are the shifts? We're seeing a steady growth of adoption of Macs in the SMB, which is as expected. Zero trust and cybersecurity advances in small businesses. Will, you want to color that up a little bit?
I love that. Yeah, you're just dropping me in at the deep end. So I guess the past year has kind of been a bit of a proving ground for small to medium businesses. Cybersecurity kind of frameworks, ready to go, and a lot of businesses are trying to adopt them, one or many. And then also we've seen an uplift in how many small to medium businesses are at a higher risk of things like cryptojacking or even having data breaches. We've kind of had this shift from big businesses being the center point for risk to small and medium businesses having that same risk. So it's been an interesting year. Zero touch access has been a key word throughout the year, and it has been the year before that, I know. And I think it will continue to be for sure.
Let's pivot to Apple. So 2024, big year for Apple. We covered a lot of the Apple Vision Pro. You can catch those reels and episodes in our YouTube. iPhone 16 was launched with the hero feature being Apple Intelligence. Yeah. Funnily enough, yesterday, iOS 18.2 was released, making the Apple Intelligence features available for our region. And
not all of them.
Not all of them.
Some key ones.
Yeah. So that's been interesting to play with. We saw a new Mac Mini, the M4 chip on the Pros, as well as other updates like Apple Watch Series 10. Moving to significant technology events, one that we can mention is the Medisecure ransomware attack, where personal and health data of 13 million Australians was breached. Patient prescriptions, including details on medications and reasons for use, were leaked on the dark web. So, I mean, I feel like these things just happen more and more. I mean, there's obviously the Optus one that happened the year prior. The Crowdstrike DERP is the title for it now.
Stopped airports, stopped supermarkets, everything. The world kind of stopped for, I don't know, how many hours was it in the end? Luckily for us, we were at the end of our day in Australia.
Luckily for us, majority of our clients use Macs.
Yeah, exactly. But going back to the Medisecure thing, I think it sort of hits the point on what Will was saying with small to medium businesses really focusing heavily on zero trust and the whole security side of things. They're seeing these big companies getting breached, and here they are, these small to medium businesses, and they have nothing in place, or they have the very bare minimum in place, and they've still got confidential data and everything that they don't want to get out. And I think it's really making people realize that, you really do have to get on top of it nowadays. Otherwise, you're going to end up with something like that, and, it can cost you in the long run.
That's the world we live in now, 100%.
That was one of the craziest things that happened, right? Medisecure had to basically file for bankruptcy in the end. That business tanked because they didn't have security practices in place. Yeah. And that's not to necessarily scaremonger, but the risks are out there, and businesses can be blind to them. Any business, even with high security, can still be breached, can still have problems, but you want to be on the defensive side where you can. So tying back into literally everything that we're doing at the moment, which is awesome.
I guess it's about making that investment first, dipping your toes in and, getting something started security-wise or with zero touch or whatever. And in the long run, like what Will's saying, you're gonna be better off for it for sure. And I think a lot of people are realizing it now that you can't keep putting it off.
You can't not. And it's just knowing where to start, really, because I think most business owners are like, well,
I'm only small. What do I need?
Well, yeah, and I don't have an unlimited budget either.
Exactly. It's expensive.
And a lot of the better tools do cost a bit. So it's prioritizing the essentials and then working from there.
Yeah.
And as we always talk about, it's multi-layered. You got to start somewhere.
You might have just one IT guy who works for you, and it doesn't mean your security is going to be up to scratch as well. So it's sort of weighing everything up.
Yeah, and protecting your endpoint devices is definitely a good place to start. Segue into CrowdStrike again. CrowdStrike being an endpoint solution for PCs and Macs. In this case, for this significant event, this CrowdStrike vendor had the DERP of the Year award. Yeah. What occurred?
Essentially, it was a bad production line. So they were doing some testing on the sensor that gets installed onto the endpoints. And they were testing that in a sandboxed environment, right? A very secure environment. It also had some other features and other packages installed in that environment. So it wasn't clean, which actually meant that the sensor was running off of kind of two different systems or sub packages. And so when they released it out into the wild, every device automatically updated without warning. That's part of the solution that they offer, is automatic updates. But it pushed out to all of the devices. Apple devices were fine. Linux devices were fine. But Microsoft machines could not handle that missing package. It actually put them into a semi-dead state. Now, all the data was still there. It was just that they were basically locked out. What's interesting is that for us, it highlighted a really big section of the market where businesses are solely reliant on Microsoft devices, that they don't have any other means of running their business outside of that one platform. And so a lot of those businesses have now kind of come up with strategies and replacements for their existing tool set to try and stop things like that happening again. There might be a case in the future where a different tool goes down, but you don't have any idea of like what the impact would be until that happens, right? And obviously CrowdStrike, because it was non-malicious, a lot of companies actually lost revenue and couldn't claim that on insurance.
Which I think that put it into perspective for a lot of people around, how much technology does control our lives, and if something stops, then everything stops.
They had such a name prior to it happening, and for those in the industry know CrowdStrike, and those who aren't would have known it for the first time through that event.
Yeah, but my mum knows about CrowdStrike now.
Yeah. Or if you see it on, on the Mercedes cars in the F1.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's another way to see it.
I'm not sure are they still going to be able to afford that sponsorship anymore.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Moving on to failed launches. Now, failed is a bit of a objective, subjective way to put it, but let's see.
Harsh, that's the world we live in, isn't it?
Let's start with the Rabbit R1. Will, what happened there?
Oh, do you know what? It was set out to be quite a cool product. This company based in the US actually collaborated with Teenage Engineering, which is a product design company. They have made some really, really cool stuff before, and it's all beautiful. This company paired with them to create a wearable device, something that you can pin on yourself or hold in your hand. It essentially just had a learning model in it for AI purposes. So it's basically like having ChatGPT in your hand. I think maybe 48 hours after release, it kind of just completely flops. They released it online and people were kind of like, oh, it's quite cool. And you get the usual people come in and say how amazing and adventurous this product is. And then I think the cool design by Teenage Engineering subsided, and under the hood, you could see that it wasn't actually a very good product. They had some manufacturing delays and some other kind of questionable intentions with it. Then it just completely flopped. It was not a product that you'll probably see again. I mean, do you really want a singular device for AI if you can have it built into your phone?
Just feels so far from...
Yeah, I think it was just, it's like a novelty add-on that didn't really hit the mark.
Kind of shows that we are in this sort of weird in-between period in technology where we've reached as far as smartphones can go. And it's all very incremental now. And then you look at the rise of the new stuff, whether it's through AI and LLMs and stuff, and that's still too new to be, right in there every day. And I feel like it's coming, but it's not quite here yet. The reason why I question that if that's was a fail or not is, just like the Apple Vision Pro, like some things just need to be put out first as that concept car type thing and just sort of see where it goes. Whoever was going to put out a wearable in this fashion, whether it would be now or next year, was always going to be subject to the first one to go and then see where it takes. It is I guess, a sign of what's to come.
With sort of maybe the fatigue with people wanting to update, not seeing the benefits because maybe, we're really trying to perfect the technology we have rather than bring out something new. So when people do bring out something completely new, like the wearables, like the Humane AI pin and the Rabbit R1, and they're not perfect, it makes it, really hard for them to actually go anywhere. It's not going to go anywhere unless anyone tries, though. So you kind of need those first kind of fails, and then you'll see the growth on top of that. And we're seeing it, with the other wearables as well. We've obviously got Whoop that's really successful.
Yep.
And a few of the rings now. First was the Aura, and now the Superhumans come out. I see it on TikTok all the time, people comparing it, and there's new features. And
how does it differ?
The Aura's very heavily subscription-based. It is on the pricier side for such a small, ring. It's also not tiny, so it's okay to wear, but it's not, you can kind of tell it's got technology in it, so it's not just your average ring. Then you do have to pay for subscriptions on top of that. So depending on what you're wanting to monitor, depends on the cost of your subscriptions, per month. Whereas Superhuman, it's a little bit slimmer. It probably looks a little bit more modern, and there's no subscription-based fees. And I think it is a little bit cheaper at the start too. I think we will see a lot more of these coming out. Especially
with these sort of wearables where they don't want you to remove you from your life.
Yeah.
They just want to enhance it, collect your data around your health and kind of give you insights into that.
People want to integrate everything into one synonymous product, right? You want to be able to go into one portal or one phone and be able to do everything that you need to do. And that's probably where Apple's got it right with Apple Intelligence, is that you can just do everything on your phone. You don't have to carry around separate products for separate things. And that's probably where I think that the Rabbit R1 and the Humane AI pin, they're not going to kick off, because it's just like people don't want multiple products anymore. You go back 20 years or even less, and if you go into an office space, you'd have a calendar on your wall, you'd have sticky notes, clock even on the wall, right? And now you don't need any of that because you've just got your iPhone and your Mac. It's all integrated, it's all built in. But the rings and Aura stuff, it's interesting to see where that will lead, because I think health is a huge technology market and it's ever expanding. People want to know more about their body. I
think when it's done right, there's sort of no reason not to, especially if you do want to know more about your health, maybe something that the watch can't provide. I know a lot of women look at these for, ovulation and stuff like that, a natural way to keep checking your body. If it seamlessly fits into everything else, I think that's where you're going to win.
Nico, do you want to talk us through emerging challenges for small to medium businesses in 2024, kind of trends and problems that small to medium businesses face?
Let's go 3 categories: individuals, businesses, critical infrastructure. So have a guess. What are the top 3 reported cybercrimes for individuals?
We deal with this a lot, on the service desk.
Yep.
Identity fraud.
Okay.
For sure.
Well, yep. Ding, ding, ding.
Yep.
Yeah, she cheated, but that's okay.
No, well, I do experience it.
Well, exactly. So your anecdotal experience matches up with the results. So 26% of all self-reported cybercrimes for individuals is identity fraud. I mean, that's no surprise. Everyone's password from at least 2+ years ago is probably available on the dark web. Yep. So if you haven't changed it since then, you're already in the amber, especially if you've got the passwords app. It'll tell you. It'll tell you. And followed by online shopping fraud and then online banking fraud. Now for businesses, email compromise is the top at 20%, followed by online banking fraud and then business email compromise fraud. So email compromise, to be more specific, Will, how do you interpret that?
That's a really great question. I wish I knew the answer off the top of my head. I don't exactly know. That must encompass a few different things. Email compromise is probably being able to grab data on transit. So you've sent an email to a recipient and it's managed to grab the data. And it could also be that you sent it to the wrong email address. Like spam may fit into that as well, and phishing attempts.
Yeah.
You get sent
impersonating.
I think a lot of the ones that we see is when an email's compromised, a lot of different rules are set up within an inbox, sending things everywhere and stuff like that. And that's a lot of how you can tell a lot of the time.
The one that we've seen, the company doesn't know it's compromised.
No.
There'll be a rogue account that's being used, and it won't set off any alarm bells because
it looks kind of
normal. But then you dig into it and you realize they've been sending to the client base.
This will be a great one to touch on in another episode. Hopefully we can get Nick on here, our security guy.
Wow, you've called him out.
I've called him out
by name.
Yeah, and we can go through some of
now
these things.
Now they know him by name. He has to.
Everyone knows him. He's a loud guy. We can get him on here and talk through a lot of these things and what to look out for, and what we do at Mac Centre as well to test everyone. What we touched on at the start. This is only going to keep growing for everyone's business.
I think that segues well into critical infrastructure. Top 3 is compromised account and credentials, which is probably how they get in the first place. Malware infection on the endpoint devices, and then compromised asset, network, and infrastructure. Common themes there: identity fraud, email compromise, and credentials. I mean, if there's anything that we've learned in 2024, it still goes back down to credentials, identity. Turn on your two-factor.
It actually directly associates with the trends that we're seeing in small to medium businesses and what they want to do in security, what they want to try and achieve. They want to try and do zero trust networks, and they want to try and do passwordless. They're the two things that would actually lower these massively. We're headed in the right direction.
All these results are from the ASD, Australian Signals Directorate, so all Australian-based data, trends that are happening in our region. Let's move to predictions for 2025. We'll start with the one that you just mentioned there, which is the death of the password. Will, over to you.
Kill the password. We don't want it anymore. I would love to see in 2025 more businesses that we use personally and as a business adopt passkeys and be able to leverage existing passkey infrastructure. So Entra ID or Okta or any other identity provider that currently offers it. I'd also love Google to start offering that as a service. A user or even my mum, be able to log on to every service without worry of a password and it being breached. I think we have the devices set up for success already. Apple have been able to formally pull your passwordless tokens into iCloud. So even if you lose your device, you can sign in on another device. And this seamless service that has kind of been built in the background for so long, and it's finally kind of ready for mass adoption. So I'm hoping 2025 kills the password finally, and we can move on with our lives.
Sounds like a good year.
Me dreaming.
What else do we have here for 2025?
I've got kind of a controversial one, but it's something I've read in a few places. Fatigue with just the release cycle of hardware. So the economic climate's changed. People are watching what they spend their money on.
Yeah. I like to call it the iPad effect.
Whether you actually need it or not.
Well, iPads just seem to never die. It just does its job. It's hard to get people to refresh.
True, actually, and maybe an iPhone and I feel like any phone's becoming like that now.
Yeah, the incremental releases are just not as compelling anymore. And because Apple's done such a good job in future-proofing their products, you're finding that year on year, especially if you've upgraded recently, you're just like, I'm good.
You're getting more time out of it.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't think it's a negative thing. I think it ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
I think we've reached a point where, we are perfecting a lot of technology for what we're capable of right now.
Yep.
We're focusing on bigger things outside of this, like electric cars and things like that. Maybe that's what people are more investing their money on. I know you can't compare apples and oranges. New technology that's a little bit maybe more exciting, and
the physicality of the product. Can that get much better? We've got really good cameras already. We've got pretty good battery life already. We've got amazing displays that are crystal clear. So what is it that we really need on an iPhone or an iPad? We're probably talking about Moore's Law there, and not our fearless CEO, Danny Moore. Another professor from the US coined this phrase, Moore's Law, and it's around how every 2 years the density of transistors on a board would get greater and greater. But we're seeing it kind of flatline at the end. There's a really interesting company in the US who have just invented a way of speeding up the processors on a device like tenfold. At the moment, obviously, you've got like electricity running around the circuit. And this company has designed a way of actually sending light around that board instead. And because light has different wavelengths and you can control the pattern a lot easier, means that you can actually have 16 different processes running on a single chip at the same time. Doesn't sound like a lot, right? But then you times it by how many transistors you've got on that chip. They're seeing like crazy computational power as a technology-focused business. It's like, how does that fit into the world? Yeah. I can only see bigger and bigger processing sizes.
Sustainability goals too. Everyone's more environmentally conscious. Looking at now the fast fashion side of things, people are trying to figure out where to spend their money.
Yeah.
I think people are willing to spend more money to ensure the environment's going to actually get better.
You bring up a good point because we are approaching 2025. Apple have their 2030 goals. So you can see it on the horizon, and a lot of the things that they're striving for really have to come good now.
Talking about running out of time or making sure we reach that point, I don't know if you guys have seen the art installation in New York City Metronome, and it's actually counting down the time we have to make a change before it's too late.
The impending doom of it all.
It's a bit grim, but I think maybe that's what we need to, try and shock us into making a change, which, obviously Apple's trying to reach that point, but we'd like to see more companies doing that, I think.
Curtail this with something like sad and worrying, but I have a feeling that we're going to see a big AI data breach in 2025. Yeah. I think it's going to be the year that a lot of the legislation and jurisdiction from governments get involved in AI to try and help protect us in terms of its growth capabilities, but also how we use it and what it can do and what it can't do. I think the regulations kind of falling behind. And we spoke about this with Philip Mayer on one of our recent podcasts, which was fantastic. I do think next year there will be a shock moment in AI. We'll have to report on it. You heard it here first,
guys.
Get ready. Follow us and subscribe because we're going to go on that journey together.
Yeah, we'll see if Will's right.
Don't really want to see it, but I think it's probably bound to happen, and maybe this will help us learn how we actually deal with AI moving forward.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it there.
So that's a wrap up for 2024. It'll be interesting to see what's to come. Yeah, stay tuned, follow us, and for a few more fruitful discussions. Hopefully we'll have a few more guests and a few more spicy topics.
Spicy topics, I'm all about it.
That's it, guys.
See ya.